What's happening, guys? Selling Mike, Super Training Gym, Marco Bell's Powercast, HowMuchYouBench.net. Answering your questions from Instagram. If you're on Instagram, watch this shit. If you're watching this shit, check out my Instagram if you guys want to ask questions. Starting from the bottom, would you get an MRI, or would be getting an MRI beneficial if you're having lower back pains that you can't get resolved? Being injured and figuring things out is a difficult path and sometimes a long path, but what you got to do is just take it step by step. First, I would go to mobilitywod.com or YouTube, MobilityWod low back pain. Do some of those exercises and things and try to fix yourself. I believe that would always be step one. Unless you're obviously in an emergency pain, go to emergency hospital. Step two would probably be take some time off lifting step two, go to a chiro, physical therapist, or doctor, figure it out. They'll lead you into an MRI or whatever they think is needed. Sometimes it may be an X-ray, sometimes it may be an MRI, depending on their methods and their way. Another thing, like along with step one, that I would recommend is just standing more, sitting less, and focusing on your posture more. The more you can keep your abs tight, the more you can keep your glutes locked in, kind of keep your neutral spine even when you're standing, even when you're sitting, the less likely I think you have low back pain and low back issues. Do you take pre-workout, or is the donut way the way to go? I don't really take pre-workout. Very typically for me, I don't really take a lot of supplements. I do enjoy caffeine. I like a lot of caffeine, so I'll drink an energy drink here and there, and then mostly just coffee, pre-workout or coffee throughout the day. How do you incorporate progressive overload in your maximal training? When people say overload or progressive overload, I think they get confused. Progressive overload simply means that you're adding some kind of resistance to your training over time so you can progress. That could be last week you did 3 sets of 3, and this week you did 2 sets of 3 and 1 set of 4. That could also be last week you bench pressed 225 for 3, and this week you bench pressed 226 for 3. That's progressive overload. Obviously, the more advanced you get and the more you train under the bar, the further your career goes. It's less than just a week that you can progress. Sometimes you have to kind of trick it and pull some things along the way. So training sub-maximally, the first couple weeks is pretty light, is pretty easy, but then once you start to get into it, you'll start to hit, at least for me and how I program things, you'll start to hit some volume PRs, 5 sets of 8 at a weight you've never done before. I'm coaching Little Smokey up a little bit on his deadlifts right now, and he just hit 3 sets of 8 at a weight that he's never even done for a set of 8 before. So stuff like that is the progressive overload. The sub-maximal weights just means that you're handling less than 90%, so like 80 to 65%. How tight do you wrap your wrists during your bench press sets and a PR? I typically wrap them pretty tight. The whole reason for the wrap is you kind of want to get that bar straight into your wrist, straight into your forearm, straight into your elbow as you're pressing, and the wrap kind of does it for you. Gripping tight, kind of flexing will help, but if you can use wraps, might as well use wraps, and they help a lot. Am I going to visit Europe? No plans of visiting Europe, even though I'd love to visit Europe. I'd love to go to FIBO, Body Power, and then travel around in between there, but no plans right now. Things are pretty busy on the home front. Does keto diet really work for natural lifters? I don't think the question is, does this diet work? Does this program work? Does this method work? Does this exercise work? But is that method, exercise, program, diet optimal for you? And often I'd say for a power lifter, something keto mixed with some stuff or some low carb days can work very well, but a full keto diet, I personally do not believe works well for a lot of power lifters, as the energy systems we're using is a little bit different. What I've understood is that you have a strength, a hypertrophy, and a speed day. Do you vary the reps, sets, and accessories, or do you keep them all the same? What defines the rep, hypertrophy, power, whatever the hell you want to call it, days is varying the reps and sets. You could also vary them on accessories. Obviously, you don't want to do a max 3 curl. I mean, you could. I don't know. Some people might do it. But training your biceps, your back, your hamstrings, all the isolation movements in all various rep ranges also help. So something from like 4 to 7, 8 to 12, and then 12 and beyond hits different muscle fibers, trains different strengths on the strength curve, and so I think it's important to train all those along with the main lifts. I really want to get into lifting, and I don't know how or where to start. Ain't nothing to it but to do it.
Feel it though. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Give it to me one more time. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Now rock. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Slow it down. Ain't nothing to it but to do it.
You can do it. Put your back into it.
You can do it. Put your back into it.
Come on. I can do it. Put your into it. Come on.
You can do it. Put your back into it.
Come on. I can do it. Put your into it.
Don't stop. Get it. Basically, what I would do is I would start. I would, if you're not very confident, I would find a coach. They can help you a lot with form and stuff along the way. I would do hopefully what you're already doing, watching YouTube, watching Instagram, trying to learn from those that are more experienced, maybe a little ahead of you. And then it's just time to start. Start light, but learn the form, have fun. Doing deficit pulling and doing snatch, grip, deadlift interchangeable, since both increase the range of motion needed to complete the movement. That's a very good question, because if you break it down to just range of motion, they are the same, I guess. You know, you're lifting the bar 1 to 3 inches further than you would off a regular deadlift. But there's a few things that'll end up being different. Obviously, your hand placement puts a different amount of stress on your mid-back, upper back, and lats. So your back, in my opinion, gets worked a little bit more with the snatch grip. But in terms of your low back and legs, kind of getting overloaded a little bit with both of those because of the increased range of motion, compromised or iffy starting position that you're put in, then yeah, I guess they're similar enough. Try both, maybe for 3 or 4 weeks, and then see which one you like more, or which one carries over more for you. I've done both in the past, and I think both are great exercises and have a time and place. What program do you recommend an intermediate lifter? I've been using the conjugate method, and I was wondering if there's any program more efficient. The conjugate method is obviously a method of theory. It's not a program. So you can run conjugate and get 0 gains, or you can run conjugate and get tons of gains depending on how wisely you plan it. I do think true conjugate west side is kind of more made for a more advanced lifter, just because handling max efforts often you need the muscle mass to handle it, and you also need the motor pattern. You need the technique to handle it in those movements. The less efficient you are in those movements, the more you'll get crushed. And if you're max efforting twice a week, you're going to get crushed really quick if you're not very efficient. Do you typically flat bench or floor press more? That's a good question. I would never say typical with any of those, just because everyone's going to be different. Obviously, on the floor, it's often a shortened range of motion, no leg drive, often less of an arch. On the bench, you get kind of leg stability, a little bit more of an arch, but the range of motion is a little bit bigger. It'll depend on your strengths and weaknesses. Some bigger guys, the range of motion is kind of the same. Some smaller, skinnier guys, it tends up being like a board press, so they might be able to do a little bit more off the ground. Ways to reduce knee discomfort after squatting. I don't know about after squatting. After squatting, something like a foam roll or icing might help afterwards. But let's address the issue of your squat. Often people are breaking at the knees, which isn't necessarily wrong. But if you're very long femored and you can't get your knees out, have that external rotation action going on, so your hips can drop straight down. That'll put a lot of pressure on your knees. So getting more into your hips and hands, also just having stronger hamstrings in general, regardless of the style you squat, can help a lot as well. Pancakes or waffles? Waffles. Doing reverse hypers, I get a lower back stretch that sometimes feels like a pinch. If it feels like a negative pinch, I'd stop doing it. I don't really have advice, sorry, I can't help you. Mike, what is your advice for an ex-basketball player trying to transfer into powerlifting? Any particular program? No particular program, my man, but chances are you're a little lanky, you're a little tall. Obviously, I am not, so I didn't have those issues, but eating, sleeping, knowing you don't have to go all out all the time to progress in powerlifting is kind of something that I had to learn. Basketball, you're going all out pretty much all the time. First on the suicides, first on the rebound drill, blah, blah, blah. It's not always like that in powerlifting. You got to pace yourself a little bit. How do you think knee sleeves, how necessary do you think knee sleeves are? I'm a college guy, I got a budget, blah, blah, blah. honestly, nothing is necessary. You know, the only thing necessary to get stronger is kind of a barbell and weights, and that's kind of why weight training, weightlifting, and powerlifting in particular are kind of cool, and they are what they are. They're simple, yet optimal and the most effective way to build muscle and build strength, in my opinion. So do you need a knee sleeve? No, you don't, dude. There's tons of people squatting over 800 pounds with no knee sleeves. Can they help? Do they help? I'm not going to say they don't. Do I like them? Yes, I like them. But they're definitely not necessary. If you're going to miss a meal over it, or miss a class over it, or miss a mortgage over it, or whatever, rent payment, don't do it, man. Just stick to it. You'll make that money in the future and buy yourself like 50 pairs of sleeves. That's it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, share, like, comment below what you guys want to see in the next one. I'm back to a little bit more normal schedule, so we'll get more footage, some vlogs, Q&A once or twice a week. That's it, though.
Let's go! Up!